World War II was the dawn of the atomic age. It was a conflict defined by advanced machinery, radar technology, heavy artillery, and the terrifying efficiency of automatic weapons. It was an industrial slaughter where death often came from miles away, delivered by faceless machines. Yet, amidst the roar of engines and the rattle of machine guns, there walked a man who seemed to have stepped out of a malfunctioning time machine, a man who looked at a German Tiger tank and decided to draw a Scottish claymore sword, a man who signaled the attack not with a radio, but with a screech of bagpipes. His name was Lieutenant Colonel John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill, known to his men simply as Mad Jack. And his philosophy on warfare was simple. Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. To understand the madness, we must first understand the man. Jack Churchill was not merely performing for an audience. He was a warrior born in the wrong century. Before the war, he was already a man of unusual talents. He represented Great Britain in the World Archery Championships in Oslo, worked as a male model, and even appeared as a movie extra, playing fittingly an archer. He possessed a restless, almost dangerous spirit that peacetime simply could not satisfy. While the rest of the world trembled in fear as Germany invaded Poland in 1939, Jack Churchill was arguably the only man in England who was happy. Upon hearing the news of war, he reportedly smiled and said, "I am back in my glory." He didn't just want to serve, he wanted to conquer. His legend began almost immediately, during the disastrous retreat to Dunkirk in 1940. British Expeditionary Force was being crushed by the German Blitz. Morale was shattered, and chaos reigned. Yet, amidst the burning trucks and retreating columns, Captain Churchill was calm. He carried a massive basket-hilted Scottish broadsword and a longbow. In a village near Le Panette, as a German patrol advanced, Churchill did something that hadn't happened in European warfare for centuries. He hid behind a wall, nocked a feathered arrow, drew the string to his ear, and loosed. The arrow flew silently through the air and struck a German sergeant in the chest, killing him instantly. It was the only confirmed longbow kill of the entire Second World War. The psychological impact on the witnessing troops, both British and German, was indescribable. After Dunkirk, Churchill volunteered for a new, experimental unit. The Commandos. These were men trained for butcher-and-bolt raid suicide missions designed to terrorize the German coastline. It was the perfect environment for a man like Jack. He thrived in the brutal training of the Scottish Highlands. While other officers studied logistics and maps, Churchill practiced playing the bagpipes while throwing live grenades. He believed that warfare was fundamentally psychological. A German soldier expects a rifle shot. He does not expect a screaming madman waving a medieval sword. Churchill was turning himself into a living nightmare for the enemy. On December 27, 1941, during Operation Archery, the target was the German garrison at Vigsy, Norway, as the landing craft ramp dropped into the freezing water. The first sound the Germans heard was not gunfire, but the haunting melody of the march of the Cameron men. Jack Churchill stood at the very front of the boat, playing his bagpipes as bullets pinged off the metal hull around him. As soon as the boat hit the sand, he threw the pipes aside, drew his claymore sword, and sprinted into the town, screaming commando. He led the charge with such ferocity that the defenders were completely unnerved. He captured the enemy batteries simply because the Germans couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. During the fighting in Norway, a report came back to the British High Command that sounded entirely fictitious. It stated that Churchill and his corporal had captured a German bunker using only a sword and a revolver. Jack described it as a matter of attitude. He would charge so confidently that the enemy assumed he was backed by a tank or a platoon. The sword became his symbol. He argued that it was a silent weapon. It never jammed. It never ran out of ammunition. And, most important, it terrified the enemy. In a war of faceless machines, Jack forced the enemy into personal, visceral combat where technology couldn't save them. But it was in Italy, during the Salerno landings in 19... He was now a lieutenant colonel, commanding No. 2 Commando. His orders were to capture a German observation post in the village of Pig. The position was heavily defended by mortars and machine guns. A frontal assault would be suicide, so Jack decided to do it alone. In the dead of night, armed with his trusty claymore and a bag of grenades, he crept into the darkness, ordering his men to wait. What followed is one of the most bizarre feats of the war. Churchill utilized the darkness and the sheer absurdity of his weapon. He found a sentry post, burst out of the shadows, and placed the cold steel of his sword against the terrified German's throat. He didn't kill him. Instead, he signaled for surrender. Using this prisoner as a human shield, he moved to the next post. The sentries, confused and terrified by this phantom with a sword, surrendered one by one. By the time dawn broke, Jack Churchill walked back to the British lines. He wasn't alone. He was marching 42 German prisoners ahead of him, along with a captured mortar squad. He had captured an entire garrison with a sword. When asked how, he simply said, "I maintain that, as long as you tell a German loudly and clearly what to do, if you are senior to him, he will cry Jawohl and get on with it." However, luck in war is a finite resource. In 1944, Churchill was sent to Yugoslavia to support Tito's partisans. The objective was to take a heavily fortified hill denominated Point 622. The attack was a disaster. The partisans retreated, and Churchill's small group of commandos was pinned down by intense German mortar fire. One by one, his men were killed or wounded. Eventually, Jack was the only one left standing. As German infantry advanced to finish him off, they didn't find him cowering or reloading. They found him playing a sad tune on his bagpipes, "Will the No Come Back Again," waiting for the end. A grenade explosion knocked him unconscious. The Germans thought they had killed him, but he survived. When they realized they had captured the famous Mad Jack, he was immediately flown to Berlin for interrogation. They assumed he was a relative of Prime Minister Winston Churchill due to his name. He was not. But that didn't stop the SS from sending him to the notorious Sachsenhausen concentration camp. For most men, this would be the end. For Jack, it was just a new challenge. He wasn't a prisoner. He was an escape artist in waiting. In September 1944, Churchill and an RF officer crawled through a secret drain they had spent weeks excavating under the camp's electric fences. They made it to the coast, aiming for the Baltic Sea, but were recaptured just miles from freedom. He was transferred to a high-security camp in Austria, guarded by the SS. As the war neared its end in 1945, the SS guards received orders to execute the prisoners. But Jack's luck held. Regular German army units, fearing retribution from the advancing Allies, took custody of the prisoners and let the SS flee. Seizing the chaos, Jack simply walked away. He walked 150 kilometers across the Alps, surviving on vegetables he stole from farms until he encountered an American armored column in Italy. He was free. But Jack wasn't celebrating. He was frustrated. The war in Europe was ending, and he felt he hadn't done enough. He immediately demanded to be sent to the Pacific Theater to fight the Japanese. He arrived in India, preparing for the invasion of Japan, only to receive the news that the atomic bombs had been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war was over. While the entire world celebrated peace, Jack Churchill uttered one of the most famous and controversial quotes of his life. He threw his gear down and exclaimed, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. To him, the atomic bomb was an unsporting end to the great adventure. He was a man deprived of his purpose. Peace did not tame Mad Jack. He qualified as a parachutist. At the age of 40, he became the first man to surf the River Severn's tidal bore. On a board he designed himself in Palestine during the riots of 1948, he once again coordinated evacuations while wearing full-dress uniform. Years later, sitting on a commuter train in London, he would startle passengers by opening the window and throwing his briefcase out into a seemingly random backyard. When asked why, he explained that he threw it into his own garden so he wouldn't have to carry it home from the station. Jack Churchill died in 1996 at the age of 89. He was a relic of a bygone era, a romantic figure in a cynical industrial war. He proved that morale, audacity, and a touch of madness can be just as effective as the most advanced weaponry. In a conflict defined by tanks, planes, and atoms, he will forever be remembered as the man who fought a tank with a sword and won.